Hi, hi, I'm Auntie Kay, and I'm joined here by Amanda today for another episode of Oracles of Colonization.
I can only
Today,
just hear you.
you can barely hear me? Okay.
Is it recording
volume?
already?
It is. That's okay. I'm Auntie Kay, and today we're going to talk with Amanda about with the Oracles of Colonization. We're going to cover 5 and 6, which is Polite and Righteous Rage. And I'm going to introduce myself briefly. And then Amanda is going to introduce herself, theirself, and we're going to have a fairly casual conversation back and forth about how we feel about these things and how they relate in our lives. And so I'm Auntie Kay, or Krista Demore Flute, and I'm Lakota and Cajun scoop survivor, scoop from Standing Rock to southeastern Ontario, and I currently live in Algonquin territories. And I've experienced these a lot. I've done a lot of different work in Indigenous communities, and some of it has been in fairly polite settings, and some of it has been in very rageful settings, and I have lots of strong feelings on both. Amanda.
Hi, my name is Amanda. My pronouns are he, him, and she, her. I am from the Kwakatus and Carrier Nations, and I am Two-Spirit. And I am living in unceded Mi'kmaq territory. And if you're watching this, I hope that you know where you're living, whose territory you're on, and you're working towards helping those people live in their ideal decolonial way. Yeah. Now these cards, I'm excited because the polite and what was that one there?
Righteous Rage.
Righteous Rage. I facilitate between those two, you know, like it's the ultimate code switch.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. It's the game we have to play to survive. And it's the other game we have to play to survive. We're either being excessively polite to survive, or we're letting out our rage so that we can survive to have our needs met.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic cards.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm really impressed with this deck. I'm really proud of you too. And so honored to be a friend of yours.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be a friend of yours, and you do a lot of work, and you do have to, you know, figure out like how to live within these, and how to fight within them, and how to like create change within them.
Yeah. I find too that as we age, I think we move a little bit away from the polite because it was like forcefully, you know, some of us beaten into us, and others, you know, forced on us, right? Like politeness wasn't born out of mutual reciprocity of respect. It wasn't something we were allowed to emulate and be proud of and become. It was forced on us to perform. And so we did, and we did it and we survived. And then once we found our own sovereignty, the Righteous Rage had the opportunity and the air to pop off and expand, right?
Yeah. I lived this card in my childhood, like very much in the ways you described it. I am somebody who really struggles to not talk. I talk a lot. I'm a Gemini. People expect it. But in my childhood, I really like didn't talk a lot because in the home I was scooped to, it was emotionally easier for me to not talk. And when I did talk, it was mostly on a stage because I was put in acting and gymnastics and ballet to perform. And that's, yeah, I performed. And it's really easy to think that you're moving towards this and still like not really be there, still be performing in small ways you don't recognize.
I think sometimes there's a really beautiful flex when you are with people who are colonizers and you are in your polite space, and when you let out the righteous rage and then you switch back into polite, and it's like right, because it unnerves them. Or if they know you exclusively in your righteous rage, which a lot of colonizers do know me that way.
There's a Reddit on me.
When I switch into polite, they're like, oh, it's like they only expect me to be in righteous rage at all times. And when I switch into polite and act like an educative Indian, then they're just like, oh, right. And that's the only time that they find equity. That's the only time they think that we're equitable. And it's like, listen, I have to do the same as you plus for you to see my equity. Yeah. And in actual fact, what I see is that you're here because you can't even do what I do.
No. And like, I see that flex when I'm speaking with or for or in front of academics. I don't do polite very well. It's I don't like to do it. And I've at this point where it's hard to do it even when I should. But I, sometimes like anxiety will bring out that that side of you where you're just okay. But when I get to speak academically, then I get that same thing where like I'll be speaking academically and it's like, oh, you're not like just raging in the streets, like you can put this in my language too. Yeah. It's the equivalent of putting on a nice suit and walking in somewhere.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love your cards. They're so fantastic.
Thank you. So righteous rage though gets an incredibly, colonizers hate it.
I actually would love to have that framed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like that framed in my house. That I love that card.
It's something I would have to figure out, and to be honest, I don't know if I want to figure out creating add-ons and merchandise.
I'm not asking for that. I'm just going to buy 2 decks and put one of them on my wall.
Buy 2 decks, put one on your wall. Oh, you know what we should do is read the things for people and and get to discussing about these 2 impacts in those ways. So this is one of my favorite write-ups. Polite is the voice that commands our behaviors and expressions, forbids any raising of boundaries or physical defense. Polite is a Karen and she's protected by the patriarchy. Speak out. So here we're talking more about those forcing the politeness on us, the ways they play polite, because they play it. They know how to play this. Damn, do they know how to play this? But yeah, we do it too sometimes.
Well, if we slide into our righteous rage and let's say swear, then it's, you can't talk to me that way. And, how dare you go there? And they start tone policing, right?
Yeah, big time. Righteous rage has finally had enough. Righteous rage has come to understand that it is love that lights the fires of passion and renewed hope, and this time no one's stopping them. This is love.
Mm.
All right, where do we want to start?
We could go in numerical order. Let's do it the colonized way. Let's go linear.
Let's go linear. All right. So let's just do them together. It makes more sense.
Yeah. The colonized way and the linear way never makes sense. It leaves out too much.
It does. It does. Because, you know, actually, when thinking about this moment in tarot, when you see the progression and you're moving forward, it's a good thing, right?
Mhm.
And every time we move here, they want to pull us back.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want to pull us back. And you know, we get tone policed for our righteous rage on individual levels and in community levels. Our actions get hugely tone policed.
Yeah.
And that's hard because, like, one of the things I like about actions is there's enough people that I feel safe enough to, like, release more of this righteous rage.
Yeah. Yep. And I like that it's coming in as the 5 card, because I think it's the 5 of coins that is left out. And it's such a Karen or Becky behavior to leave someone out, right? That exclusion, that behavior of we're polite, you're not one of us, right? And to leave somebody out. And because we would never do that, right? We look for those who've been excluded and bring them in.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Armida and I talked about the 5 of coins too.
Mm.
We talked about that image of the church window being where we're supposed to go for safety.
Right. Supposed to, and yet it's the card of being left out.
Yeah.
Because they're selective about who gets in.
Mm-hmm. That they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 6 often speaks of victory and balance and equity in the tarot and as a number itself, right? And giving to more than one. Yeah.
Yeah. And we need to realize, because we've been told socially that righteous rage isn't equity, that rage isn't equity. Rage is hate. You're being hateful. You're being hateful. I'll never forget as in Kingston, we approached, this was when I was in Kingston, Ontario, which is Huron-Wendat, Algonquin, Mississauga, and Haudenosaunee lands. And we're approaching the anniversary of the Women's March, where myself and a number of women of color told off the 600 white women in their pink hats. And as the anniversary approached, and somebody asked if there was going to be a second on Facebook, of all places, a response came back: "We tried to create unity and women of color destroyed it with their hate." Because as they all politely talked about their fears of, you know, Trump grabbing pink pussy, because that's the only one he was going we were like, where the fuck were you when I hosted the I Don't Know More protest, whose sign you're holding, when she hosted the, like, no one is illegal protest, whose sign you're hosting, when she hosted the Black Lives Matter post, whose sign you're holding, like, you're holding these signs, where were you? They were mad.
Yeah.
And they were allowed their righteous rage, which wasn't very righteous.
Right? Yeah.
They were allowed their rage. They
Mhm.
were allowed their rage that we were angry.
Yeah. because they always protect each other, right? They do that leave people out thing again. So if there's one of them getting called out, tons of them swoop in to protect the one getting called out. And if there's a settler ally in there who dares to say anything, they get left out with us.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that threat of exclusion. And that always makes me think about how people say, oh, we're going to change systems from the inside. You can't change your friend groups. What makes you think you're going to change systems of oppression that have chiefs and commanders who are entrenched in racism? You and your frontline position. That's not going to happen. You're not going to raise through the ranks and change anything. Your righteous rage, acting polite, doesn't get into the systems and change things.
It doesn't.
No, what happens is it changes them, right? It dehumanizes them. And they become victims of the system inside the system. And now they're dependent on the system for their livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're working with a bunch of Karens and they're not allowed to have any righteous rage.
Right? Karens and their partners, Chads, because they're only heteronormative. We know that.
Their partners are why Karens are dangerous.
Yeah.
Their partners are why. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a white woman who feels threatened because her man and his buddies on the force will come for you.
Yeah.
You know, I've never taken part in a Take Back the Night protest because all the women marching in those streets are calling our people dangerous because they're afraid, not because they've been hurt. And statistics show us that. Statistics show us that, you know, white women might experience more violence than men, but white women experience less violence than men, Two-Spirit, and women of color.
Yeah.
Because every time they're afraid, we experience violence.
Yeah, exactly.
What's our seat called?
Okay.
I'm on my car.
Close the door. Take it downstairs. Ask somebody downstairs for help.
Why?
Because I'm busy.
Are they entirely sleeping?
No,
Or are they here sleeping?
I don't know. Go figure it out. There's lots of big people here.
He's so big now.
He's about to be 7.
Wow.
Yeah. Got him shoes for his birthday early today because we've just hit the 3rd shoe size in 12 months.
Holy. Wow. Well, me and my kiddo are sharing clothes now, so. Oh, they grow fast.
Coco has muscled up some at Land Back and is now wearing bigger clothes and I can wear her clothes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and there's a good example. Land Back, you know, so many actions that they do. They're too rageful for so many in our communities to be willing to protect. And you hear things like, well, if you do that, you know, these people won't like you and they'll hate all of us. If you're rageful, these people will be afraid of all of us. And that's exactly the problem. These people, when they're afraid of us, are dangerous.
And they will come to our front lines and be violent. And we have women, Two-Spirits, and grandmothers on the front lines. There's children. There's nothing violent about those places. You know, that's community. Yeah. And then white men, and sometimes their women, come to the front lines with violence, throwing stuff at people, you know, bringing the police in who use their excessive force, right? That's not our way.
No.
So when our people try to tone police us, saying that our actions aren't appropriate, that's fear. That's just fear. And they've done that well, you know, for centuries now.
Yeah. Yeah, they have. They've done it well for centuries, but there's other, you know, I feel like the hippie movement had a negative impact and we rebounded, and, you know, there's a bit more rebound in the 90s, and then the love and light has had a really terrible impact for Black, brown, Indigenous people of color.
The love and light is just so toxic. It's so toxic. It falls right into the being polite, right? It's only obsessing about love and light and not willing to do the work in transmuting the dark. They won't even look at it. So how can I trust some spiritual hippie that they are an ally when all they talk about is love and light, and they can't fathom talking about dark, right? They can't fathom the idea that there's some shadow inside of them, and they would just prefer to try to ignore it, right?
Yeah. And
then
anger is part of that dark that they just demonize and weaponize, and they demonize it. Anger is wrong. Anger is
Yeah.
dark. Anger is negative. And just even like this division of good and bad is light and dark.
Yeah. Hugely, hugely toxic and problematic.
Yeah.
I used to work at an organic market, and this girl would come in the back and she'd be like, oh my God, I'm so tired because I did Reiki sessions all day yesterday. And I was like, then you're doing it wrong.
Because you've done a lot of, you in your life have done a lot of these works that a lot of those hippies consider light work.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then you get out there in the streets and
Right.
release your angry Indian all over the place.
Right. And it was funny because they would tiptoe around me as an angry person, and they would be like, well, I can't do that sort of stuff. Right. And I was like, but that sort of stuff is valid. And they would get it from the concept of being a feminine presenting white woman, that there's rage against the patriarchy, but they had no power or spirit or anger to make them active against that. And then they'd come to me at work.
They're protected by it.
Totally, right? It's if they, I would be tempted to call it Stockholm syndrome if they weren't so active in maintaining it, you know? But it's all love and light for them, and it's all, you just manifest it until they're having a bad day. And then it's, I don't know what's happening. It's this, that, and the other. And other people are toxic. And it's like, you haven't looked at your toxicity, and you haven't unpacked your side of things, and you haven't sat with who you are and drawn boundaries. You just go into excessive puking of love and light. And then you say that you're manifesting something and that it's that law of attraction. And it's like, no, it's privilege. You are all over the place except for in your power with knowledge. You're just spewing spiritual shit that you found on Instagram. You don't have a mentor, you don't have a teacher. And then when you do seek these out, they're typically Indigenous. I was talking with two white guys at this market, and they said, oh, we're planning a trip to Bali. I was like, oh, that sounds good. And they're like, yeah, we found this shaman teacher. He's you know, a traditional this, that, and the other. And I was like, uh-huh. And we're gonna learn from him, and then we're gonna do a vlog. I was like, so you're gonna go take his knowledge and try to profit from it? Is that what I'm hearing? No, 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 no. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. You're trying to colonize spirituality in Bali for your white Canadian selves.
Yeah.
And they were so offended, they both unfollowed me on all the socials and stuff like that, which is great, actually. Please do
Yes.
that.
Well, and I mean, that ties into, you know, polite and the Heirophant, which
Yes.
I've used the charlatan,
Yep.
and I've used the charlatan in a political sense, but political, religious, they both serve political and religious structures.
Yep.
You know, which, like it or not, capitalism is based on both those structures.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and they protect her.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they protect her, and they don't have boundaries. They have rules and dogmas, and yeah, appropriated knowledges used for profit.
And an endless thirst for an extended what's it called? What do they call that? Bottom line. You know, and it's like there's nothing that's limitless. There's a limit to everything, right? In the physical world, there's a limit to everything. So you can't have endless profit and bottom line.
Can't.
And that's where boundaries have never been respected by them, right? Natural boundaries, natural laws. So is polite from the tarot deck and the charlatan from the oracle?
Charlatan is from the tarot deck,
Okay.
and polite is from the oracle. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, the typical one, of course, is the structural religious figure of a Heirophant.
Yeah.
But I don't see, and I don't think, I mean, it's one of those cards where it's like, how is this a positive title? But that's the thing about it. They are based on European concepts, and a lot of their positive titles are really destructive for us. They are
Yep.
shadows, right?
Yeah.
Which
yeah,
one
yeah.
of those is a shadow deck?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
The Hierophant can also mean marriage, right? And it's like that in itself is a colonial structure that was about women as property. And people fight to maintain that. And it's still about property. When we look at how people can't afford to own a house, I mean, why we even have ownership, that's a whole other,
Yeah.
right? But you need a 2-person income in order to survive, you know? And so you need to have the structure of a parent and a parent, you know, an adult and an adult. And so marriage has become the way to succeed financially, to maintain, you know, middle class, if you
And
will.
it's also
right?
why you see serial relationships
Yeah.
in marginalized communities, in communities below the poverty line,
Mhm.
because you can't survive as the only adult in a apartment or room, and so you can't leave an abusive relationship without finding a replacement.
Yep. 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 You know, I remember leaving my marriage and being afraid of this specific thing. And it has been so terribly hard. But I'm also really proud of myself for not shacking up with anybody, you know, because it has crossed my mind, you know, the thought of, oh, if only I had a person,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a really terrible place to be trying to manifest a partnership from, right?
Yeah. I left a long-term relationship too, and then ended up homeless for 7 months. And so since then, I won't rent or stay in a place that I can't afford on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I've rarely let another partner live with me or full time or whatever. Yeah. And because as much as it offers like this safety, and only this, as much as it offers this safety, like that's the danger, is that
Yeah.
it offers this safety.
Yep. Very much so. Very much so. Because it doesn't offer sovereignty as a human,
No.
right? We all deserve to be sovereign in ourselves and to partner with somebody who's also sovereign in themselves, and to be intentful about sharing our time and space and passions together, right? And creating future things together, whether that's one or more partners. And these setups demonize more than one.
Which is something
You know?
that's a problem for both of us.
Right? Yeah. Like there's natural boundaries in nature, right? There's boundaries that occur in nature. There's limits, but there's no limits in love.
No.
Right? That's an energy. And the love and light community seem to think that it's something, first of all, that they can commodify, and that it's something that if you slip into your righteous rage, you lose the love.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's only space for one, and it's like space is limitless. Your guys' concept of energy and natural laws are so broken and so disconnected from the actual reality of it all, that we are in a climate crisis with people who are going to suffer and struggle with food security and housing, and you know, it's going to get uglier, right, as water's commodified, and then we're criminalized for trying to protect these things that they treat as unlimited natural resources, when there's the limits there and not on the love.
Mm-hmm.
They literally took us from our families for hundreds of years and put us in residential schools and put us with families that weren't our own, and tried to indoctrinate us with religion. And yet we still know the truth of these things. We didn't lose it. It's still with us. It's in your decks. It's in our lived experiences. And we're constantly shouting it from the top of our voice. And they're looking at us going, "You're wrong." And it's like, we haven't been wrong for 600 years.
Yeah.
But repackage what I just said and try to sell it to me. Go ahead.
And yeah, so here we see about no boundaries, just rules. So boundaries and rules are really different things, but we don't think of them that way.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes that's what makes it really difficult for us.
Yeah.
We're afraid of boundaries because they don't like boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think we're also afraid of boundaries because we've been told that boundaries are rules.
Yes. 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 And every time we broke a rule when we were younger, and no matter how arbitrary the rules, they like arbitrary rules
Mom,
too, okay?
This one don't be long. Okay.
They like arbitrary rules, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the rules, yeah, the rules protect them.
Yeah. Well, and when they raise children, they have arbitrary rules. And it's almost like it's a test. and then inevitably children get it wrong because they can understand it's arbitrary, and then they're punished. It's like they get pleasure out of making a child wrong. And it's because they indoctrinate them with fear from an early age. Because when they're afraid and they're under the thumb, they're going to become polite citizens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I
Which
look at
is
that
why
show,
they raised us in their households, so that we would become polite citizens. So we would become in Indian citizens, First Nation citizens, but not Indigenous.
yeah.
We would just become, And as a scoop survivor, one of the things that's hard to say is like, it was a really effective program.
Mm-hmm.
And a large majority of scoop survivors, our concept of Indigenous comes from her.
Yeah.
And we reproduce that out there, helping our impoverished siblings on the res and on the streets. We're raised by her, and too many of us act like him.
Yes. Yep, like saviors to our own people.
Yeah.
Doing it with the colonizer's way and the colonizer's money.
My friend who I'm staying with, she does volunteer work at the First Nations school in Toronto, and told me, oh yeah, there's this native cop that comes around a lot. She was a scoop survivor raised by cops. How perfect is that?
Wow.
Is that really any different than when like Indian agents had half-breed kids that became the next Indian agent?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's tragic.
Yeah. And so we come to these where, we insist that anger is love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anger is love.
Absolutely.
And children act out amongst and throw temper tantrums around the adults they feel safe around.
Yeah.
That they feel loved around.
Yep.
And when they feel loved, they're able to express their anger and their rage.
Yes. It's very true. I got a very angry teenager. Sometimes, just kidding. But no. And when we talk about love as energy, we are taught from the white spiritual community that it's only expressed as happy and joy and bliss and contentment and being grounded or spiritual and connected. And it's like, it's also anger.
Yeah.
It's also disappointment, because when you're disappointed, you had hopes, right? It's another way of expressing love. It's all love. The root of it all is love. And so when the expression of love is something that you're experiencing as unpleasant, you got to unpack past the unpleasantness to get to the love.
Yeah. Well, I was raised by pacifists, and I rebelled against that. One of the things I learned and realized about it is pacifism doesn't care. It's apathetic.
Yeah.
There's no love there. It's apathetic.
Yep. It's the absence of love. It's the absence of compassion. It's the absence of empathy. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's kind of gross.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really is. And
And when we also talk about love, and I'm looking at the Lover's card here, it's also about creation, right? And I don't just mean about, you know, a penis and a vagina and sperm and zygotes and shit like that. Can I
mhm,
say that here? I'm going to say that
yeah,
here. Because we create when we are sharing passions with another person, right? Whether it's that we are creating time together, we are creating a future together, we are creating a home or other plans together, or children. And creativity is that chakra, right? It's
Yeah.
where we are grounded and connected to the earth from. It's where Mother Earth creates and gives that appearance of an endless wealth of abundance, which if we weren't raping her, we would all be able to experience that abundance. And so when we talk about love, it should be creating something. When somebody is being a pacifist, you're not creating anything.
Mom,
You're letting energy go stagnant and die.
Mom, I need a ramp.
Does he need a ramp?
he needs a ramp.
I need ramp.
Get one of the board game boxes,
Why?
because if you get two and set one of them like that, one box flat and one on an angle, and it will create a ramp.
No.
Mm.
I'll get you some.
You're really interrupting a lot today. It's not very fair. Yeah. And there are so many different ways that we create, and it is for others. I've said before, this is my 5th attempt at a tarot deck in 6 years. The other attempts each died when I got to the point where I realized I didn't have the capabilities to ever take it to the next stage.
I just want to see it.
When I didn't have the capabilities to share it.
Right.
I think that way would stick this to your nose.
Yeah.
And what changed?
A opportunity, other people who had overcome or never had the barriers that I had, which were both financial security and technology, expensive technology. So
Yep.
finances again. And because you have to use certain programs that are going to be acceptable, and
Right.
not something you get on a free app on a tablet or a phone. Other people had to fill in the barriers that I had.
Yep.
Because and that includes all along the way, because platforms where anybody can start their own business require secure accounts, credit cards,
Yep.
ID. And so those are things that people below the poverty line don't have. And so other people had to do those things for me.
And so this project embodies these 2 cards, because from your righteous rage and learnings in life, you could foresee this deck and the need for it. And then in partnerships with other people and the love they had for you and with you, you created this.
Yeah.
That's
and
beautiful.
all of them were people who, they know this side of me. Like I have a reputation for embodying this, but
Yes.
like the Lover's card is also Gemini.
Yes.
And I am Gemini, and
And it's got your little Pisces moon in the background.
yeah. Not on YouTube. Yeah. It's got my watery moon there in the background. But like the heart chakra is ruled by swords energy. And there's a lot of this in swords energy.
Yeah.
And a lot of need for this in Swords energy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because Swords energy is also truth. And you
Yeah.
can't have, you need to, righteous rage is always grounded in truth. And so
Yeah.
is love.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this is a card that asks us to, be true to our inner truths. And it represents the Lover's card, because if you're not true to your inner truth, you're not going to have a healthy relationship with anybody else.
Yeah.
Because you won't have boundaries. You'll just have these weird, bizarre rules of society that are going to create a lot of toxic ideas in your relationship.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. Righteous rage is solid truth.
Mm-hmm.
There's no space for it in anything else.
Yeah.
There's no
Because
space for it.
the flames have burned away everything and only left truth behind.
Yeah. So we're burning up a cop car.
I love that. I'm framing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm framing that.
Yeah. So you said it made you think of, back here we were thinking about 5 of coins or pence. What do these two make you think of? Or in particular, do they make you think of any of the weapon suit? Or the swords?
Any of the what?
Any of the sword suit, since we're talking about this.
Maybe the Queen of Swords with the righteous rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That fits in my Queen of Swords too. What queen, did you bring your deck up?
I did, but I wasn't thinking of the deck that I use. I was just thinking in general of, it made me think of the Queen of Swords. It actually made me think of oh gosh, I got to flip through 72 things here.
I partially organized, so once I grab the white ones, it should work here. My Queen of Swords is definitely, I hope I got her, because I'm not looking at all the right cards. She definitely, yeah, when she say that, here she is.
Oh, lovely.
Zapatista.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love that. I'm trying to find the card it made me think of.
All right. I'll let you keep looking. I'll read what I wrote for her. Okay. This ante holds the essence of every drop of blood and volunteer of this suit. Silent as a cat, this Zapatista is seeking their own justice for us all. Chiron's known for the wisdom of healing the trauma that will never fully heal. This ante, however, is just going to end them. And the reverse is alienating those you're fighting for, which we do sometimes do.
Yep. And the reverse of that made me think of the charlatan card, Pipeline Perry pretending to work for us.
Yeah, and he's alienated so many of us.
Right?
So many of us.
Yep. Before we move on, I wanted to say that charlatan card, when it was paired with the polite, it made me think of all of those white spiritual women that appropriate our practices and then, or like sell sage or dream catchers or steal indigenous beaters work and stuff like that. And then when they're called out in it, they're like, what? I didn't know, and it's like, listen.
And then a spiritual version of Perry comes along.
Yeah. Right. And makes it all okay and has bought into that one love bullshit, which one love is real and valid, but not in the way they use it.
No.
Not in the way they weaponize it.
No.
Yeah. But I found the card that your 6, your righteous raid made me think of, and it was this one in the Next World Tarot.
Oh yeah, I
Revolution.
love this card.
Yeah.
Defend the
It is my
sacred. And at 16, the Tower.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Tower a little bit before, in
And
these, which we're going to, I'm sure, so many times.
It's also ruled by Scorpio and Mars. Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so we got the
Oh, I
Mexican,
love that.
American, and Canadian flags burning.
Yeah.
And money.
And money, yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how many white people get mad when I have a flag? I have a Canadian flag that's I wrote decolonize on it, or I don't know, something, it's old, and I wrote it so that it's upside down. And how many of them love to yell at me, how dare you do that to a flag? And it's like, I did it to a flag, not your fucking face.
I made a Canadian flag, wrote on it upside down, and then set it on fire in the middle of a Canada Day parade. It made news. If you're in Canada, you can look it up. There's like even a political cartoon about it, although they made me look pretty chunky. But like, how dare you do it? It wasn't even a real flag. I didn't use a real flag because the ones in Canada, because it's legal to burn a flag in Canada, what they've done is made them out of this inflammable stuff. And so if you do get it burning, which takes gas and stuff, if you do get it burning, it smells horrific. So I made one out of cotton so that I could cleanly burn it. They lost their ever-loving minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I received, interesting on this topic. So when I burned the Canadian flag during Canada Day and it made national news, I received 97 hate mails.
Oh.
When I told off Karen at the Pink Pussy March, I received over 100.
Jeez.
And this one was national, and that was in one city.
Local, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in one city, over 100. They were more angry that I told off Karen. As angry as they were that I burned a colonial flag, they were more angry that I called out Karen.
You know, I want to go. Colonizers came up with this saying, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt me. But then they get all mad about being called Karen. And they get mad about being called out. And it's like, those are words. You had fire in one hand. Somebody could have got hurt. They didn't. But come on, Karen, sticks and stones. You made up that saying.
Yeah. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Just be polite. I only say this when I'm talking to you. It only applies to us. It's the rules for us. It's another rule and command for us.
Yep.
And then their excuse to say whatever they want in return.
Yeah, 100%. Because their fifis are hurt.
Yeah.
We are not allowed to have feelings.
No, we're
our
not.
feelings are never valid and worth being heard, which is how they shut us down.
The only time we're allowed to have feelings is if we do this before this.
Right? And even then, the lovers, they don't want that because they just want to take our creation from us, right? They don't want us to have children. They don't want us to have prosperity. They want to take all of that from us. Whatever we create, they want to destroy. And when you hold up that other card with Trudeau on it, and when we're talking about the words these people use, it makes me think of the Apology Act that Harper wrote in 2011. You know, because That's
Okay,
more
talk about
charlatan
that one.
energy. That's
It is.
more, I'm going to give this lengthy, wordy apology about residential schools. But first, I'm going to write an act that says that making an apology does not mean we are responsible for any repair.
Yeah, and let's talk about that more, because the whole Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the
MMIW inquiry.
That too, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission specifically. So, Canada does Truth and Reconciliation because, South Africa did it, and we're going to do the same great things, which always was ironic because South Africa learned apartheid from Canada in the Indian Act. They traveled here to do so, but in South Africa, and there was issues, but we're not going to get into it because that's not our business to discuss. But it happened after apartheid, and it punished people. There is an act because Canada never intended for it to be anything other than a polite apology where nothing happens. And we just reconcile shit away.
And all of the provinces have enacted similar acts. And so now they're giving out apologies left, right, and center that have no meaning. And people don't realize this.
No, there's a there's a video. It might, who's it by? It might be would it be nah? Oh man, I wish I remembered. Might be a music video. But it's Trudeau saying I'm sorry over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny. But yeah. And yeah, so they enact policies to ensure that an apology is nothing more than a surface level politeness.
Yeah.
And never goes deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fooling all of the Canadian populace who are not Indigenous into thinking that reconciliation has happened, because once they've made an act that they are not responsible in any way, they can go ahead and do truth and reconciliation inquiries and not be beholden to following through. They can do missing and murdered Indigenous women inquiries and have all the recommendations in the world, but because of the Apology Act, they are not legally responsible to follow through.
Yeah.
Politicians can make promises of clean fucking water, and then they're not legally obligated to follow through, right?
That's right.
And how these polite Karens.
I wanted to So Trudeau's holding a canoe here. Do you remember that speech? Yeah, they can make an apology and promise us sheds for a canoe. But did anyone get a shed? Did you get a shed for your canoe?
I didn't get a shed.
I didn't get a shed for my canoe. I even finally got a canoe once I fixed the holes in it. Yeah, I went out and took me several years, but I managed to get a canoe. But I don't have my shed, Trudeau.
Damn.
Yeah, my Indigenous youth want their shed.
I'm going to ride my scooter.
All right, enjoy. You look good in all your new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Apology Act, also UNDRIP.
Yeah.
UNDRIP prevents this. UNDRIP's final article ensures the sovereignty of colonial states cannot be dismantled. You can't land back.
Yep. And then the British Columbia government are trying to manipulate UNDRIP into their own version of it.
Yeah, UNDRIP actually gives colonial states incredible powers in all those little clauses, like that they feel a need to make it any worse. Like they already had 10 years in the UN to rewrite it. And it's awful.
Yep.
Because you can't change anything in the system.
Yep. And then we have Trudeau trying to municipalize reserves because Harper wrote, he signed an agreement with China, and this is going into your charlatan card, right? So
Mhm.
when they talk about the
'Cause
left and the right,
Pipeline Perry's predecessor was involved in this stuff too.
yeah,
Atleo. Sean
that's
Atleo.
Sean Atleo. So we talk about the left and the right, like they're separate things, but they're this wings on the bird, which we all know, right? We know, but colonial people don't seem to get it. They think that their politics are either or, and it's like, it's the same. Harper signed an agreement with China that they can have all of the crude from Alberta and that no level of Canadian government can stop them from having it. And the only thing stopping these pipelines are Indigenous people, because we are not part of the Canadian body politic. And so Trudeau, the new wing of the bird, is trying to municipalize reserves so that we are part of the Canadian body politic, and now we can be legally stopped.
The extermination tables where Indigenous title is
Eradicated.
is dismantled and eradicated. And Trump took this up and is trying to implement a similar thing in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Trump,
And-
like Trudeau's idea, people. Take that into your head. Trudeau's idea was so colonial.
Mhm.
Trump thought it was awesome.
Right. Because they're the same, that they're not different in politics. They're just different in the charlatan thing that they present. What goes on in the back rooms is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And both of them work with this guy. Doesn't matter who you are, you work with this guy. And he says yes. He says yes. And the people get angry and get rid of him, and they find a new yes.
Exactly.
Because in the system, and it's interesting actually, because so the AFN started out as the Indian Brotherhood in Canada, which was a group of Indigenous folks who decided they were going to lobby the Canadian government. And then the Canadian government's like, excellent, good work, boys, good work. How about we pay for you to do this?
Yeah, right. Give you some money, and then you're ours. Then we're the puppet masters, and you're the puppets.
And so they've become the AFN, and you know, who are they lobbying? They're lobbying us on behalf of him.
Yeah, and they're all men. So the patriarchal systems have
Would
come
it make a
after
difference? Look at JWR.
Yes. So don't get me wrong. I don't think that any person of color in politics is somebody that we can depend on, right? Politics need to be destroyed, period. I have a soft spot for Romeo Saganash.
Me too. And here's my deal. The reason he's my uncle of weapons is because I don't know if you can ever actually fully trust the King of Swords, but maybe we can kind of like him.
I'm just saying that he carried the righteous rage into the house.
Into the house.
Cards. And he dropped his bomb of fire. Right?
He
Absolutely.
did.
Yep.
He brought some righteous rage into the House of Commons.
But I still
and
don't.
He did not pay polite.
I still don't think that there's any room in my heart for people who are Indigenous, Black, or a person of color being a politician or any level of colonial oppression, be it police officer or, social worker, whatever, right? That's not going to fly for me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because they end up having to be charlatans.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
They still get paid by him.
Yeah.
He just sends it to somebody else who sends it to you.
Yeah. Yep.
But you're still
just
paid by him.
Chief and council, same thing.
Chief and council, friendship centers, that money comes from whichever provincial federation of Indian friendship centers you belong to, but that money came from the federal government.
Yep. Well, and
we know where that actually came from.
And when the grassroots are talking to the, not talking to, but telling the city that they have to get rid of these colonial landmarks, the city then goes to the Friendship Center and says, oh, we're going to build you a nice new center, but what do you got to say about those colonial landmarks? Right? And inherently those places that should be places of safety for us are bought by the city or the province.
Yeah, well, in Kingston, the home of Sir John A. Canada's first prime minister, who, you know, started residential schools, created the Indian Act, all kinds of so many horrible things, including declaring Canada should be an Aryan nation. When we protested on and against that statue in Kingston, they used to toast it on his birthday. Birthday parties and all that, we stopped those. But when it came to tearing down the statue, and I was really, really angry with the white left on this, because I believed it was their job. We'd done so much work on it. They were going to come straight to our houses first. We said, it's your job. They have never done it. So the city held a vote on it. And I was pretty sure that we were going to lose that vote. Anyway, so when the vote was finally tallied, the headline in the news came out. Almost half of city residents opposed tearing down the statue. So they kept it, because almost half.
Oh my God. And hence righteous rage is born.
Yeah. So, you know, they found a really polite way to deal with that.
Yeah.
Despite the vote, you still lost.
That's incredible. And yet not surprising.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a poem once about it. And the line that's coming to mind was, they decided they liked the statue a lot. Words like genocide went too far, they thought. Which we also see in this, actually. The term cultural genocide for things that are clearly described as genocide in the UN Convention Against Genocide.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. What words of advice, to wrap up with, would you have for folks who, you know, want to express their righteous, for Black, Brown, Indigenous people of color, folks who want to express their righteous rage and have been afraid to?
Surround yourself with community, because we all find ourselves surrounded by colonizers and settlers, and that really oppresses our righteous rage, and it becomes suffocating. And the more time you spend in community, the more time you will feel the empathy and be seen and heard and be free. The freedom to express yourself is so beautiful. And from that expression, ideas to really emancipate ourselves will come forward. And also in that community space, you'll find joy, because joy is the lover of righteous rage.
Yeah. Joy is the lover of righteous rage. I like that. I like that. And, you know, if you don't know where to find community, instead of looking in your phone book or Google, go find go find protest and make community there, because those are the people who aren't afraid to love hard.
Yeah. And also online, because that's where we found each other
It is.
many years ago.
And so far, everybody so far recorded for this talk. There's going to be other people soon, but yeah, so we've spoken to Armida and Emma, who, you know, we also met online through Indigenous homeschooling and baby wearing. And that's also how I know Amanda. And those are real ties. We met in real life also.
Yep.
Because we just knew we had to.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, I might have a ride out your way this summer.
Amazing.
If COVID goes down.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that. I would love to see you and your son.
We would like to see you and your child. Not really a child anymore. Which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I'm excited about.
I think, you know, before we sign off, between age years is where they find their righteous rage.
They do.
You know,
it's really difficult.
They practice it in that safe space of home, you know, but it's so that as they mature, they can use it in their rage intentfully, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm constantly finding myself like, this too shall pass, you know?
12's the most difficult year to parent.
Mhm.
And it's also like one of the most fascinating years to parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with me and for helping me get these conversations out there. Yeah.
My pleasure.
See you later.
Have a good night. Thanks for
You
including me.
too.
Bye.
See you.